Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you for having me on.
We're looking at inspiring verses in the Quran. And of course, we've said that, all of the Quran is inspiring, but there's some verses that touch people a lot more than others.
True.
And so, Dr. Shabir, we're looking at chapter 7, verse 156. And it begins with Moses speaking to God, saying, "Grant us good things in this world, and in the life to come, we turn to you." And then God responds and says, God said, "I bring my punishment on whoever I will, but my mercy encompasses all things. I shall ordain my mercy for those who are conscious of God and pay the prescribed alms, who believe in our revelations." So it's an interesting exchange. Moses is talking to God and God is responding back.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And in the verse before this, Moses is said to have gone up to meet God with 70 of his followers.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were struck by fear because the mountain quaked, that is when Moses prayed to God, saying, "If you wanted, you could have destroyed us all previous to this. So please don't do it now."
Mm-hmm.
And he's begging God for his forgiveness and mercy and so on. And so it continues into this verse, where God then responds and said, "Yes, I will punish whoever I want, but my mercy encompasses all things. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ." So that's an interesting statement, that his mercy is all-encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
Because one might think of God as being strict in punishment, and the Quran asserts that too. But Muslims are encouraged to not think of God as being heinous or cruel or sadistic or anything of that nature. We should think of him as being merciful, because remember, all of the chapters of the Quran, except one, begin with the phrase Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful One, or the Mercy-Giving, the Compassionate One. Difficult to translate, but there are two words there for names of God, which each is intensive in Arabic, and each describe God as being merciful. So intensely merciful.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Shabir, this verse could be very consoling to an individual who, let's say, has committed a lot of sins and is not sure, they're repenting, but they're feeling like, okay, maybe God is not accepting from me. When they read this verse, they can realize, okay, God's mercy encompasses all things. God has the capacity to forgive me if God wants, right?
Yes, and in fact, some Muslim scholars will go even as far as to say that if the repentant person is thinking God will not forgive me, that thought itself is a sinful thought, because it means that the bonds person, the servant of God here, has an improper estimate of God. There is a verse in the Quran, it's in the 22nd chapter, almost at the end, where it says, "Ma qadarullaha haqqa qadri." They do not estimate God with the right estimation. So we should have the right estimation for God. On the one hand, yes, we should know that if we continue to sin, if we persist in sins, we should be forewarned that God's punishment is severe. But when we are repentant, that is the time to expect the mercy of God, because that's what he has promised, and he does not go back on his promise. Moreover, when we are repentant, we are in the category of the people whom God is going to forgive. If God is not going to forgive the people who are repentant and have mercy on them, then on whom is he going to have mercy? So if you think that God is not going to forgive you, that thought itself shows that you do not have the right estimation of God. You do not really appreciate the fact that he's merciful. And, most of us don't want to be around people who think we are cruel, we are sadistic, we are uncompromising, we are, so stern and strict that we cannot be moved to compassion. So we should have the right estimation of God by knowing that he is merciful and that he will forgive us. So, there's a saying, you have to forgive yourself. Well, this is the way to do it, by reaching that point of knowing that God is forgiving you, and you should accept that.
Dr. Shabir, why do you think it is that Muslims don't have that general understanding? Generally Muslims don't really think of God as being merciful, right? And this verse, "My mercy encompasses all things," is not really talked about very much.
Yeah, probably, part of it is that, people take a simplistic approach. They want to take a safe approach. Okay, if I do what is right, then, I'm safe. If I do what is wrong, I'm fearful of God. And And then the preachers too. The preachers would want to emphasize the strictness and the punishment from God, because they were afraid that if they talk about God being loving and kind and so on, people may become more lax and you're relaxed, and they might not stay on the straight and narrow. So there is all this, and we find that in previous scriptures as well. We find that there's a lot of emphasis on the wailing and the weeping and the gnashing of teeth and so on when people are thrown out of the banquet. So we find some of that in the Quran as well. But you will find mostly in the Quran that when the punishment from God is mentioned, that is also balanced with mentioning the mercy of God. And then the mercy of God is mentioned very prominently here, as we have seen. In Surah 6, verse number 12 and verse number 54, we have a statement that God's mercy encompasses all things again. But more than this, God says that He has written for Himself mercy. He has prescribed mercy for Himself. كَتَبَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ الرَّحْمَةِ. God has prescribed mercy for Himself. And similar to the wording of the present verse we were discussing, we have in Surah 40, verse number 7, that the angels pray to God saying that your mercy وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ, encompasses all things. So this is what we should actually emphasize more so.
Dr. Shabir, are you sometimes
punishment.
worried that, if you emphasize the mercy of Allah, just as you mentioned about these other preachers, that this will lead to Islam not being as strong of a faith within our hearts?
We have to strike a balance. Sometimes we need to emphasize the strictness of God if we see that people are going, astray and feeling too relaxed. And sometimes, and mostly I feel, we need to stress the mercy of God, because when we stress the mercy of God, people fall in love with God. And when they fall in love with God, they want to do the right things because they love God. And it's not so much because they fear God. And that makes a lot of difference.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr.
You're
Shabir.
welcome.
The most effective and far-reaching dawah we can do these days is on social media. That's why we're developing the Muslim Media Hub. We're harnessing the power of media to spread the message of Islam. Please support this project at QuranSpeaks.com and share in the reward from God.